Greg Travis on the Fishbowl once again. Welcome.
Thank you, Sam. Good to be back on the fishbowl. Or is it in the fishbowl?
I think it's in the fishbowl, and I thank you for taking a swim with me.
Absolutely. We're all like fish in a fishbowl in a way, aren't we?
I think we are. I think we are.
It's a pretty good analogy of it all, I would guess. Yep. Just swimming around, trying to get a little bit to eat.
Yep, yep. And trying to move into a bigger bowl.
Yep. Without getting tossed down the toilet.
Right, exactly. Or eating along the way.
Or eating along the way, yeah. Or when the water's too hot on the change of water, that can wipe you out too as a goldfish.
Right.
So, you've been plugging away with your show?
Yeah. I've been getting some interviews, going to the cons. Um, I got a great coverage of the last couple of Still City cons and a little local convention called the Living Dead Weekend, which is like a tribute to George Romero's work here in Pittsburgh.
Right. I think I saw something about that, yeah.
Yeah, and
It's great. Zombies everywhere, I bet.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big craze down here in Pittsburgh, and I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
proud to say that I have George Romero's desk.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I actually did a remake of Night of the Living Dead called Night of the Living Dead with 3D with Sid Haig, and it was okay. It was kind of a experimental 3D film, so I don't think it had enough 3D in it. Was the only complaint, is that the 3D was sort of minimal. In a 3D movie, you should have a lot of 3D shots, you know.
Right.
For some reason, they didn't have too many of them. It was every once in a while they used the technique, but I guess for whatever reason. But it pops up on TV every once in a while, called Night of the Living Dead 3D. So it's still out there, I believe.
I remember when that came out. That one I didn't have a chance to check out. I've seen pretty much all of George Romero's movies at this point, especially the zombie ones.
Yeah.
But
well, this wasn't George Romero. This was just
right.
I forget the director's name, but it was just an independent. And I guess somehow the rights became available to that title, and so they weren't calling it that when we actually made the movie, but then later they somehow were able to call it that and use that title.
Interesting. Yeah, that was one I missed, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many like good horror movies that are coming out now, especially this year, that it's kind of hard to keep track of all of them.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, I just saw it, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, not to ruin anything, but wow, what an opening!
Oh my God, yeah. It was huge. It even did better than the Get Out film, which was a big hit, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm really excited to see what they're gonna do with chapter two.
Well, horror has sort of become a little bit of the thriller niche. We used to have these adult thrillers in the 80s and 90s, and they kind of went away. And so these kind of watered down horror movies that are not too bloody and they're not too gory have become kind of the replacement for that thrill ride that we used to get with the adult thrillers, you know. Don't you think?
Yeah,
A
yeah,
little bit of
definitely.
that market You know.
Definitely, I think in the not executed right way, there we can see kind of glimpses of that with like the 50 Shades of Gray movies. Like those are
Hmm.
they're terrible movies, but they're kind of like trying to copy like those adult thrillers
Yeah.
format from the 80s and 90s with like
Yeah.
the classic Mickey Rourke movies.
Right. Right. And all the Michael Douglas movies, he did a
Right,
lot of them.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I don't know where those went. They kind of like disappeared, and just, I guess, kind of lost their audience, along the way somewhere. But
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate, and I think also the audience has changed. It was like the market wasn't there too much for it anymore, and with
hmm
the expansion of like what you can show in movies now, and get away with it, because that was part of like the thrill of those movies was seeing all
yeah,
like
exactly.
the
Yeah.
risque nudity, and that's why I say like the 50 Shades of Grey movies are like terrible because you don't really even see any tits and ass, you know.
And actually, they're kind of a hybrid of a Hitchcock movie and a film noir. They're always sort of a detective Hitchcockian kind of
Right.
formula,
Well, I always thought Basic Instinct was like a classic neo
Yeah.
noir
Yeah.
film. I mean, even though it was like a sexual thriller, like adult
hmm
thriller, it had classic elements of neo noir in it, and actually I kind of classify the '90s in my opinion brought back like kind of a retro neo noir style, because you had a lot of films that not only took place in the 1940s and everything during that time, but you had a lot of movies that were throwbacks to like this style of film noir that was kind of like
Exactly.
doing it more of a
Well, it was
retro
the film
style.
fatale. The woman being the all powerful, manipulative bad girl. Who's dangerous and might get you killed. That was very film noir theme
Right,
running through a lot of those films.
right.
And so they brought that back. And yeah, Basic Instinct was one of the best ones of the group. That and what was the one with Michael Douglas where the girl is stalking him
Oh,
and his
Disclosure.
family?
Oh no,
No, what is
no.
what's that actress's name?
Glenn Close.
Yeah, Glenn Close. Yeah, that one. That was a classic one too. That
Yeah,
was really good. Yeah.
yeah, that one. And then ironically also where
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal
Yeah.
Attraction. Right, right.
Yeah.
And then there was another one with Michael Douglas where he was the bad guy, and they kind of switched the role of like the femme fatale with like the male fatale, and with A
hmm
Perfect Murder.
Right. Right. He was also a husband who was like trying to get revenge for his wife having an affair with an artist. I think there was
Yeah,
one
yeah, that's what I
like
was
that. I
thinking
don't
of.
remember the name of it, but
Yeah,
that one
that's
was
what that
pretty
was.
good too.
A Perfect Murder.
Oh, that was that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But well, he did them well. He knew how to make them, and he knew how to really pull that off. And I'm sure he had a lot of input into all those movies.
yeah, yeah. I definitely think so. I mean, there were also
Yeah.
like a string of sci-fi neo noir movies that came out in the '90s. You had a few of them. You had Dark City, um,
hmm
and the
Was that the
13th.
one with Elias Koteas in Dark City? Was he in that one? Elias Koteas?
No,
No. Okay.
William Hurt was in that one.
Oh, okay.
It was like basically there's like this alien race that like abducted us and put us on this like this planet that's like a city that they can manipulate with their minds. that's made to be like we're in like the 1930s. And this one guy who they basically like replace our memories every night. And this guy like
Oh wow.
awakens and he has like this telepathic ability called cueing that the alien race has, and he basically has to like find out like where he is and what's going on. Kiefer Sutherland's in it also. It's really good.
Hmm. I don't remember that one. Now, did you ever see the William Hurt film? Sort of science fiction, but not too far in the future, called Until the End of the World. There's like a 4 hour version of it that's out, I believe. I think it was Wim Wenders, and it was either late 80s or early 90s, called Until the End of the World. Yeah, it was 91. Really interesting movie. They shot it all over the world. They shot it in Europe, Russia, Australia. They kind of went everywhere with it. And he plays a, I think he's a detective. No, he's not a detective. He's a guy who's filming experiences for his mother because she's blind, and they've developed this machine that can recreate these images for a blind person. So he's going all over the world, capturing imagery for her to see. And so his father's played by Max von Sydow. And
Okay.
yeah, really
No,
great,
I
interesting.
missed that. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, look that one up. It's there's like a 2.5 hour version, and then there's like a almost 4 hour version. That's the one you got to see. That's the really good one. Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna check that out. It's at the end of the world.
Yeah, until the end of the
Until the
world.
end of the
Until
world.
the end of the world. Yeah,
Okay, I'm definitely gonna
91.
check that out.
Yeah, it kind of predicts the future too, because at one point they get sort of addicted to these little monitors that they're watching, and it's kind of a pre-cell phone obsession. They're looking at their dreams on these little monitors, and they become sort of lost in that world. And it kind of reminds me that the imagery that we see now, where people are just sort of staring at their phones
Right,
everywhere you go. They're just sort of like zombies staring at their little machines.
right. It's
Yeah.
like
It's
I
like
think Back
I
to
went
the
into the
Future.
lobby of an office building, and everyone in it was just sort of like stone frozen, staring at their little cell phone. It was just so weird. It was like, oh my god, this is like some sort of bizarre future world.
Right.
Like this can't be happening. This is not real. Oh no.
Well,
We become zombies, cell phone zombies.
it's like Back to the Future really predicted that part. I mean, part two,
Oh really?
where like well, I mean, it's like when Marty goes to the future and he sees um his girlfriend Jennifer runs into like the house where old Marty and old Jennifer are with their kids, and
Hmm.
the kids are basically stuck to their social media devices, which are like a little more extravagant versions of what we have
Wow,
today.
I don't remember that. I'll have to go back and check that out. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
and also
Yeah.
how Marty like walks into I mean Marty Jr. Walks into the TV living room, and it's like like a flat screen projector basically, and he says channels 24, 25, 46, so and so, and the weather channel, and they all like pop up, and it's like we basically
Hmm.
have flat screen TVs now, that essentially have all these channels. Where it was like in 1980 88, when um,
Right.
part two came out, it was like you still only had like you know not even 20 channels,
Right.
all on the same
They did
set.
have cable then, because cable was late 70s, early 80s, but I think they had like, maybe 30 or 40 channels, then.
Right, right.
But yeah, that's interesting. And now my friend has the big, projection TV hookup, and he actually can use Siri and call out things to it, and it will respond with voice recognition.
Right, right,
So that's right on the money.
right. It's like my one of my favorite lines from Total Recall. The future is now.
Yeah, I know. The future is now. Yeah, well, one of my first movies was called Future Circus, and it was a kind of I mean, we were influenced by Planet of the Apes, obviously, and that was kind of the tag of it. Is after we go through all this rigmarole and these adventures, then we look over and see two apes, and they go, "There goes the neighborhood." Which I actually did that first, and then they stole it from that Mel Brooks used that same ending with his sci-fi comedy Spaceballs,
Spaceballs.
and so but we did it first, and but we had a group of women that were the lesbian, women that had never seen men before, and we played a couple astronauts coming back to Earth after a long trip, and it's all changed. And we had these sort of like Omega Man caped people that worshiped the god McDonald's because there had been a nuclear war and only the golden arches had survived, and so we had a lot of fun doing that one in the summertime in Texas, and then I came out here and I thought, wow, I could just make movies. It's real easy, but it didn't turn out that way. It became very difficult once I got to Hollywood. You needed $1 million. You couldn't get all your friends together and just go and do one anymore. You had to pay everybody a big sum to do anything. So kind of like made it a little more difficult.
Well, you've been able to make films throughout the years that I'm really a huge fan of. So keep doing it.
We are. We're trying to close a deal for the next three, which should happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on that. And right now, what we've got going on is I did this film in '05 called Night Creep with the character actor Don Calfa in the lead, and another cute actress named Christine Sparks, who plays Cindy Cinnamon. And she's a stripper who breaks up with her boyfriend and moves into a new apartment. And she takes this drug called Night Creep and has like a little psychedelic experience with it. But then it supposedly might have residual effects. So in this new apartment, all of a sudden the landlord starts coming into her room at night. And so we don't know if it's a dream or if it's the drug she took or if it's really happening. And so it's pretty creepy. And because I was sitting around when I was, well, what's the creepiest thing I could think of? I was like, somebody coming in my room at night while I'm sleeping is pretty creepy. And so that was the gel of the idea. And so I developed it from there, and we did this little feature. And it got a foreign release back when I first finished it. I hired a rep, and he got a foreign release on it, like in, I don't know, South Africa and some other places, but it never did get a United States release. So I'm putting it on a few platforms like Vimeo and Amazon, and we're just going to self-release it and promote it that way. And it got the attention of the guy who runs Fangoria. He absolutely went ape over it, and so we're going to show it in a festival coming up at October 1st. It's going to be premiered at the Unnamed Film Festival, and it'll be the final show of that weekend. And so that'll be the premiere in Philly. And so we're going to do that as a kickoff, and then get it up on the internet.
Awesome, awesome. I'm really excited to check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's color. we shot it kind of like. Are you familiar with Mario Brava?
Yeah,
Some of his
yeah.
Italian horror movies that he did. They're all dubbed, but there's some lighting that he did that's really cool that I was studying, and I sort of emulated a little bit, where it's very shadowy lighting and it's very colorful as well. So we tried to do some of that, and it's a pretty fast-paced little film. It clips right along, and of course Don Calfa is just so much fun to watch. He's so creepy and so weird, and he plays like several different. He's sort of like an invalid landlord, and when we first see him, he's in a wheelchair. He's kind of a stroke victim, but then he becomes these different people as the movie progresses, and we're not quite sure if it's in her mind or if it's really happening or what's going on. So it's a little bit of David Lynch too,
Oh,
a
awesome.
little bit of Lynchian influence there, I must admit. Yeah.
Awesome. I was a huge fan of Don's work. I mean, he had
Yeah.
some of the greatest little B grade movie parts,
Mhm.
especially in the '80s and '90s. I mean, I really
Yeah.
liked him in like Return of the Living Dead.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, he was great in that, and yeah, he got finally some recognition for that and started doing some of the signing shows later on, and got a really good response from everybody, and everybody was a big fan of him in that movie. So it's so funny because I saw that film. It was Clu Gillard was my acting teacher, and so I saw that film when it first came out. It was either in like 80 or 81. It was pretty early on, and we liked it. We thought it was okay. We thought it was a lot of, but nobody had any idea it was going to be such a cult classic. Because it
yeah,
was kind of light and the humor was kind of hidden. It was like kind of tongue in cheek in a way, the way they played it. Um, there was a lot of humor in it, and so we didn't really take it that seriously as like a serious horror movie. But it actually kind of works on both levels. I like that style of it. It's kind of a parody, but it's also kind of takes itself a little seriously at the same time.
right, right. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
also, who would have known that it would have spawned, four more sequels?
Oh, I know. Which I'm not too familiar with all those, but yeah, that is pretty bizarre. Yeah,
Well, it's like
but
I think I know Don was in I think the first and second, and it might have just been the second. Um, and then the third was actually directed by Brian Usna, who was like one of the guys behind like Reanimator and
hmm
those movies. And
hmm
then they didn't do any more sequels for like almost a decade. And then in the mid 2000s, they did which were two like straight to DVD releases of that were like a part one, part two with like brand new characters. Which I think the first one was called Return of the Living Dead Necropolis, and
oh, okay.
then the fifth one was called Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave.
Wow, they worked the raid element in there, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we're plugging away with Dark Seduction. It's had a few more screenings at different festivals, and it's on about 8 platforms now. So if your listeners want to go check that out, it's doing pretty good. And all of these films are on iTunes and Amazon and various platforms. Uh, some of them on pay-per-view as well. Dark Seduction, I think, is on a few pay-per-view channels. And so, yeah, it's plugging away. We're eventually going to try to get it going as a midnight movie and get in that rotation of, because it's just so perfect for a midnight movie. It's a pretty short film. It's like only like 79 minutes or something like that. And So it moves pretty good, and it keeps your attention, and everybody gets a big. I mean, when I screened it up in San Francisco, they went crazy for it. They laughed at everything all the way through it, so it was really fun. And yeah, everybody seems to enjoy it. I mean, there's always takes. You always get these weird notes on the Amazon, you know, star rating thing. It's like it varies from like 5 stars to this is really great, and then you get the 2 stars going, I don't get it, I don't understand it. I guess as a film noir parody, a lot of the younger people probably don't know too much about the black and white film noir, so to them it might be a little strange or a little odd. But
Yeah, I think that's kind of unfortunate. I mean, it's like when I went to film school, like we studied film noir. There were classes
yeah,
on film noir, but I think the average Joe, young person, of today has no concept of or the attention span to really sit through black and white. And it's
hmm
kind of sad,
yeah.
because
I don't know what the deal is with that. I always enjoyed. I mean, growing up, I would watch black and white movies on TV, and we never had a problem. I never had a problem with black and white. I always kind of thought it was kind of cool.
right, right. I mean,
Yeah.
like some of the best horror movies are in black and white. Some of
Yeah.
the best movies
All
are
the old horror movies are black and
right.
white. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up going to the local library and renting, all the classic Universal monster movies to
hmm
rewatch, to study. I mean, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, I mean, Lon Chaney Sr., all of
Creature
this
from the
stuff.
Black Lagoon.
Creature from the Black Lagoon, which they're remaking, by the way.
I heard something about that. Yeah.
I actually
I mean,
just
I mean, they can obviously do a better job, but I hope they don't go too CGI with the creature because that always kind of messes it up for me.
yeah, yeah, me too. I mean, I think what they're actually no, what they are doing is Universal's like rebooting all the monster movies they did, and they're
Right.
combining the universes into one universe. Starting with that Mummy movie with Tom
That's
Cruise.
right, with Tom Cruise, which I didn't see. It was came and went so fast. I didn't get a chance to check it out.
I actually
But
just watched it the other day. I rented it on demand, and
hmm
I have to say, I really liked it a lot. Um,
oh, good.
it was actually pretty good. It had elements from American Werewolf in London, stuff from like the original Mummy, and with like a new story, and there were a lot of practical effects throughout the movie. I mean, like the mummies basically has the power to raise the dead, so she's like you know
Oh, it's
really
a she mummy.
it's a female mummy, yeah,
Oh,
and
okay. Wow.
she basically has the power to raise the dead, so she's like resurrecting all these corpses and everything that are walking around, so it's a lot of like practical effects with like zombies and zombie mummies in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. I'll check it out. I'll check it out.
And Russell Crowe is supposed to be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. That'll be good. That'll be a good one.
yeah, it was definitely a fun little monster movie. I definitely
hmm
I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did, but it was actually pretty good.
Now, are you saying that he was in the Mummy, Doctor Jekyll, Mister Hyde, or is
Yeah,
this something that's
this
a
is
separate thing?
this is the new Mommy movie. They're basically combining like all the monster movie universes, and the way that this Mommy movie starts is like Russell Crowe's character as Dr. Jekyll is doing the voiceover, and apparently like he's the doctor in charge of how's keeping the world safe from evil, and he has like this monster prison in London, and he basically like it's it's really really a fun little movie. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
he's in the Mummy movie, but it's like they're setting it up for more movies, especially Tom Cruise becomes like some monster at the end of the movie, so it's like they set it up for him to do more,
Oh, okay.
and to I think they're doing. I think the creature from the Black Lagoon is supposed to be part of this universe. They're doing a new Frankenstein, a new Dracula, a new
Right.
Wolfman. So
Yeah, I heard about that. I heard about that. Well, we'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, though, unlimited abilities to make them interesting, hopefully.
right,
Well, our old Harry Dean Stanton passed away,
yeah, I
and he was a
just saw
friend of
that.
mine, and came over a few times when I was living on over in Studio City, and told us all the Marlon Brando, Sean Penn stories and everything. So yeah, he was one of the old, generation of the cowboy westerns where they got their break in those early '60s westerns. It was like him and Warren Oates, and they all played cowboys in some little western, and then they started getting parts like late '60s, early '70s, and then he really took off from there. But yeah, he was telling the story about him working with Brando in that western where Brando's the assassin, Missouri Breaks, and where he came out of the house after he set it on fire, and he charged at Marlon and grabbed him, and Marlon was like, "No, I don't want him touching me, and I don't want him doing that." And so he had him do it a different way, and Marlon ended up killing him with this little rabbit poker that he made. It was like out of sticks. He like threw it and hit him in the head with it, and so yeah, it was pretty funny. But he worked with a lot of big, and of course Jack Nicholson was his good friend too, and
Right.
worked for Jack quite a bit.
Yeah,
But the
I was.
guy was unbelievable. He lived up into his 90s, and he drank and smoked like there was no tomorrow. I mean, it was really quite worrisome at times, how much he could put away. It was like, wow. He had quite a metabolism.
Right, right. I was a huge fan of Harry Dean Stanton. I mean,
Yeah.
so many good movies, just all throughout the years. I mean,
Hmm.
Alien being one of my top favorite.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the thing about the older character actors, and in a film like Alien especially, is it really made it work so well to have these really grounded, really very specific characters that you could just, okay, you knew who that guy was. Okay, I know that guy.
Right,
And they all were so well defined and all really fine actors to boot. It just made it so much easier to watch the film and get into it because you kind of cared about the people, right off the bat. You didn't have to develop these characters that much for people to, kind of be engaged with them and care about them. So
right,
now I feel like these characters, they're just so hard to get to know, and you're not quite sure where they're coming from, and you don't know who to trust, and it's like, is he, gonna turn out to be a bad guy, or is he really a good guy? It's like, it's also convoluted and confusing.
right. And I think I mean, especially compared to the most recent Alien movie, which I really was not a fan of. I
Yeah.
mean, for Ridley Scott basically to have done the original Alien film, and then come back several few decades later and do try and like reboot it. I really was I mean, it's like I thought Prometheus was okay, but I didn't understand like where it was how it was supposed to be related to the Alien movies with where they're going in
Hmm.
the timeline. and everything. And with Alien
I think they
Covenant,
tried to do too much in Prometheus. It just tried to
yeah,
encompass too much, you know.
yeah, and Alien Covenant was just like, like I shared this thing on Facebook that was an interview with James Cameron on basically his thoughts on the movie, and like he was very politely said that he didn't really care for it, and the
Hmm.
reasons basically are the same reasons that I didn't really care for it, and that's basically it's like like you're introduced to a number of characters that all die, so quickly,
Hmm.
that it's just like you really don't feel for them. You don't know exactly who is who, who these people are, what defines them, and for all of them to just die, and it seemed like that movie was focused a lot more on the death scenes than the actual story,
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
thing that that everybody seems to forget about horror movies is that there's still a story going on that attracts the audience to you know the kills and everything that's going else
Well,
that's
and it's
going
also
on.
a rehash story that we've seen 3 or 4 times before, you know.
Right,
I mean, the great thing about the first two was that we hadn't seen that story before. We didn't know what was coming. We didn't know what the alien was going to do. We had no idea, and it's fresh and it's a new thing, and it's like, wow, this is really effective because it is so new and different. But now that we've seen that there's been 4 sequels and then a couple of prequels, it's like, well, the alien jumping out of the pod is just, is not going to surprise anybody anymore.
right, right.
Yeah. And plus, in the newer ones, they show too much of the alien. One of the things that was so great about the first ones is they just kept it in the shadows for most of the movie. You just see a little bit of it every once in a while.
Right.
And which is much more effective, I think. But whatever makes money, they try to reboot and redo. I mean, now they're talking about redoing Starship Troopers, which I don't understand why. It's a classic film. Everybody loves it the way it is. They've done a lot of lower budget sequels to it, and I don't know why they're thinking about rebooting it in a bigger, better way, but I don't know what they could possibly bring to it that would make it any better than the original. That was a
Right.
hundred and some odd $1 million film in itself. So,
Right.
you know,
And I
you
really
know,
really enjoyed that film. By the way, they've been playing I've been watching that movie with you in it, and I've been watching Man on the Moon. That
oh
American
right,
that
Man on the
Man
Moon,
on the
yeah.
Moon. Yeah, they've been playing both those movies on the movie channels recently, and
uh,
I always get a kick out of like, yeah, like I'm fr- I'm friendly with Greg Travis and have interviewed that guy a number of times. Just like funny, to see the movie and then just talk to you, you know, like one on one.
absolutely. Yeah, that was a very underrated film. I don't know, it didn't do as well as they had hoped when it came out, but it could have been a lot of factors. The Andy Kaufman thing might not have been, handled well, but I thought Jim Carrey did an amazing job with that. He's really, really good in it.
I honestly consider that his greatest dramatic performance.
I think just performance, period.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not a great dramatic actor, but for some reason that gave him enough of a comedic side to be able to pull it off. And he nailed that character so well. He never got out of character on the set. He stayed in Andy. He just talked to people and did whatever he had to do, talk to the director, but he stayed in that character. It's really interesting. Yeah, I think that's about his best overall performance too. I don't remember if he got nominated for it or not. but he should have. If he didn't, he certainly should have.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember if he did either, but I definitely agree he should have.
So, well, things are progressing, and just plugging away here. I'm working on a new horror script called Duct Tape Illuminat, which is about a couple of speed freaks in a van that kidnap young girls and they sell them to this cult that lives in a castle up in Northern California. And then we sort of like follow what happens to them once they get sold into this castle. And, one by one, who makes it out alive and who doesn't. But it's all sort of the point of view of the two main girls. And it's going to be pretty creepy, pretty scary. I'm trying to make a really old school, horrific, kind of in the vein of Texas Chainsaw and The Exorcist, going back to that kind of tone, where
Awesome.
when the shit hits the fan, when it gets scary, it gets really scary, and it stays
Right.
scary for a long, long time,
That's a lot of like what I'm trying to do with my own writing.
Mm-hmm.
Really try to bring back like the tone of the 80s and 90s with like the
Mm-hmm.
classic, horror elements.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of, I mean, with The Exorcist, it's only like the last 15 minutes of the film that really go crazy and are really super scary. The
Right.
first part of it is kind of the setup and everything, and but even the setup has a certain quality about it that, I mean, especially that opening scene in Iraq, and I mean, a lot of people said, well, you didn't really need that. I think you need that. I thought that just was so beautifully done and just set the tone for the movie
Right.
so well that it creeped you out in the beginning so that you knew something, really bad was coming up, and it just set the stage for that.
Right.
And and even with Texas Chainsaw, there's all these little things that happen, before they get to the house that kind of set the tone and the stage for something really horrible to happen later on. But I think the problem is the tone with a lot of these horror movies. It's setting that tone and the setup for the characters that's so difficult to do nowadays. That's young filmmakers don't seem to quite have a handle on how to do that.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. And I think I read on Facebook Steven Spielberg said this, and he said this to young, screenwriters and filmmakers. It's like if you want to know how to make a good movie, just study the classics.
Mhm.
And I think a lot can be said from that, because it's like, when personally when I do my own writing, depending on what I'm writing, I have some movie that I've seen like 500 times, prior, on in the background. That's
Mhm.
some inspiration for whatever mood or tone that I'm trying to write in my own work. And I think it's like, if you just study the classics, I mean, everything you need to know in storytelling, and how to write a love scene, how to write a fight
Mhm.
scene, how to write a horror movie. Like, all you have to do is go back and study the classics, and then just come up in your use your imagination, to reinvent that idea, because pretty it's like Shakespeare pretty much wrote all the stories, and
Right.
in some fashion, movies have
And Star
recreated.
Trek did them all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, but there is a little delicate matter of directing the actors and having the camera work enhance that, and knowing how to do that. I mean, it's not something you can really teach in a film school or even watching the classics of how to, have the right shot at the right time. Like too much of a close up can be the wrong way to go, or too wide of a shot. It's having that wide shot at the exact right moment and having that close up at the exact right moment to punctuate whatever it is you're doing, and you can't really teach that to film students, it's kind of almost trial and error
Right.
as to how to execute that. And in the editing, it is trial and error. I mean, that really is what it is, because you try all kinds of different ways, and you go, oh yeah, I need to end this scene with a close up, and then that'll lead to the next thing. And it you sort of discover it as you go along. I mean, you got a good idea when you're shooting it of how you want to make it, but you really don't know until you get in the editing of how it's going to end up and how it's really going to play.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. I mean that's why like the editor is one of the most important jobs of filmmaking. I personally have like a few favorite editors,
hmm
but one of them.
But it's really, I mean, all the great directors really sit there and edit the movie with the editor.
Right.
I mean, I don't know of any, I can't name any really great director that doesn't come in the editing room and spend all day there with the editor. I mean, there are filmmakers that just look at the end of the day, they look at what the editor's done and they like have 4 different versions of the same thing and they just pick out the one they like. That's one way to do it, but I mean, if you're a Scorsese or a Fellini, or if you're, Coppola, or, the great masters, you sit there in the editing room and you work with the editor. And every shot that's put together, you go, oh yeah, that works. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, let's go with that. It's like it's the creative process of putting the movie together. You know, and it's not just an editor. I mean, usually the editors are good, and they can give you, really good notes and great ideas. But it's the director that really has the vision on what it is he's trying to do. How fast the how fast of a pace the film should go, and what the little hidden things are that he wanted to do, and the subplots that he wants to weave in there, and all that kind of stuff. It's you really have to kind of sit there and work with the editor to get all of that. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah,
And we
definitely.
lost Toby here recently too, Toby
Yeah,
Hooper.
yeah, Toby
You
Hooper.
know, I worked with him a couple of times, and God, what a great filmmaker, director, really great guy. Just a really sweet guy, and just like kind of one of those old gruff Sam Peckinpah type characters, with a cigar and just like, okay, Greg, all right, I just need you to walk over to the stairs and just walk over and then look back. That's all we're doing. So he was really fun to work with on these films. Mortuary and Toolbox Murders are the ones that I did with him.
I really liked Mortuary and the Toolbox Murders.
hmm
Like I think Mortuary I liked more than the Toolbox Murders, but the Toolbox Murders was definitely good. But
Yeah.
I think Mortuary though was like a really underrated um, horror movie.
hmm
I think that one's like a little gem that
Yeah.
like not everybody knows about.
No, I know. I thought it was pretty cool too. And but Toolbox Murders had sort of a built-in audience, so it was kind of
Right,
like known from before. And
right,
it was sort of a remake of the more of a bloody and exploited version, which was the one earlier. Um, but it had moments. I mean, it definitely had a creepiness to it that was pretty cool.
right, right. I mean, but and there's the reason I think I like Mortuary a little bit more is I like I don't know the boy's name, but he was the star of the lead role in Mortuary.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember. I can't remember his name either, but yeah, he's a really good actor. Really fine actor.
I
Of course, he's a
started
little older now, but he was really good at that. Yeah.
right. I started following him when I first noticed him on that Stephen King miniseries in the 2000s, Kingdom Hospital, and
Hmm.
he was like the antagonist ghost in that series,
Oh, okay.
and then I saw him as the main boy character in the miniseries of Stephen King's Salem's Lot, and then I also saw him in the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, which he was really good in.
Yep. 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 He was on quite a roll there for a while. Yeah, he did a lot of good work. Yep, he was really good. Yeah, I'll have to look him up, see what he's up to these days.
Yeah, yeah, possibly get him on the fishbowl.
Absolutely, you should check it out. I'm sure you can find him on Facebook or something. And
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna look that up as soon as we're done here. Well, actually, we are at 51, going on 52 minutes.
cool.
So I think that's a good place to stop.
Well,
Um,
be sure and remind your folks to October 1st. We're going to be releasing the new one, which is Night Creep with Don Calfa, and I play a cop in it, and it's worth checking out. It's going to be there's a lot of nudity in it and a lot of craziness in it, and it's very Lynchian and very sort of Mario Brava old school horror meets modern day thriller. You know, so be sure and have your fans and your listeners check it out. Night Creep on Amazon and probably Vimeo. Yeah,
Definitely, definitely. You heard it on the
definitely.
fishbowl first. Greg Travis, Night Creep. Check it out. It's definitely worth a watch, if not multiple watches. Um, and also check out Dark Seduction, um, and all of the films that we talked about with Greg and everything else that we talked about today.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sam. It's a pleasure as always, sir. And have a great weekend.
Absolutely, you do the same. And thank you for swimming in the bowl with me.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.